You're listening to Media Savvy Moms with Melody and Marilyn, a podcast by ParentsAware, your go-to for information on how to talk to kids and teens about pornography and healthy sexuality.
Hello and welcome back to Media Savvy Moms. Sharing stories or memories of the past with your children and teens is a fantastic way to help them see you not just as their parent, but as an actual human being. Despite any generation gap that surfaces on the day-to-day, passing along memories is one of those foundational building blocks we can use to create stronger parent-child bonds. In today's episode, I'm going to encourage you to give it a try. And chances are you'll have plenty of opportunity to do so during this holiday season. Discovering the power of storytelling came to our family kind of by accident. More than 10 years ago now, my parents decided that they were going to do things a little differently for our Christmas gift exchange. Instead of presents under the tree for them, they asked that I and each of my siblings write down a favorite memory. It could be from our childhood or otherwise, but it was to be read aloud with them and whatever grandkids were around on Christmas Day. I don't think any of us realized at the time, not even my parents, what a treasure this ritual would become. My mother admits that the idea came to her as a totally practical solution. With grandkids getting married and great-grandkids on the way, they wanted to help simplify Christmas for everyone. And as the years have gone on, my mom now ranks this as one of her more brilliant ideas. It's certainly become a cherished part of our Christmas traditions. The stories we share are nothing grand, just basic recollections, things like family vacations, first dates, car troubles, discovered passions, and even a few lost dreams along the way. For example, my parents never did get me that puppy I always wanted as a child, but they generously provided obedience school for the lovable 100-pound retriever that my husband and I could not resist bringing into the family when we first got married. So we work our memories into this wonderful little story. And as our kids listen, they're captivated by the discovery that their mom or dad experienced real fun and adventure and challenges in their youth, just like as kids today do now. And it's magic, to tell you the truth. By telling these stories from the past, we somehow become more relatable to one another in the present. In that moment, the generation gap completely disappears. Empathy grows, and we begin understanding each other a little bit more. Saying this, I can't help think of our interview with Creed Orm from Reach 10 earlier this year. In it, he told us how as a teen, his perception was that his parents had it all figured out. They were great parents. He said he grew up in a loving, caring home, couldn't ask for more. But in his eyes, it was almost too perfect. And when he started struggling with really big challenges in his life, including compulsion to look at pornography, that perfection became a barrier to open communication. He felt like he couldn't possibly measure up. And in comparison, he felt like he was failing at life. And so, Creed's story ends really well. He and his parents eventually found a way to connect, as so many of us do, by having the needed and necessary conversations. But Creed says if he could change one thing, it would be to have his parents have shown him more of their vulnerabilities sooner. Perhaps a peek into what it was like for them growing up, to have heard some of their personal challenges or heartaches. That could have helped him deal with his own that much better. And if you want to learn more about Creed's experience, go to episode 226, What Teens Want Parents to Know About the Porn Talk. Friends, it is so vital for our kids' sake that we let our guard down every now and again. We can be strong and vulnerable all at the same time. And storytelling from our youth is one of the ways to do that. A few weeks ago, I promised on the podcast that I would share more about this tradition with you. That was in episode 245. And today I'm actually going to read a memory out loud. Embarrassing or not, it is what it is. But that means, Mom and Dad, if you're listening and it's still before Christmas, you have to turn the podcast off now. You don't get to peek and open your present early. You got to wait for Christmas Day, all right? Now, for the rest of you, just stay tuned. We're going to get to it. Before we jump in, I want to remind you that there's a free PDF available with our podcast show notes today. It's the quick guide to safer screen habits. And this guide is designed to help you start great conversations with your kids about tech and media use. Every family needs a plan to keep kids safe in this media-saturated world. And by using the quick guide to safer screen habits, your children will learn to fill their time with priorities first, using tech with a purpose, not just mindless scrolling or gaming, and know what risks and dangers are online and exactly how to avoid them. This is a plan that you create with your kids, not for your kids, and that's exactly why it works so well. To get your quick guide to safer screen habits, go to parentsaware.info/podcast and look for it in the show notes of this episode. All right, back to my memory story. I'm titling it Disqualified, if that gives you any ideas. I whipped my goggles off and threw them against the wall, an action that didn't nearly have the cathartic effect I hoped it would. It was more than a disappointment. I was devastated. And when I wrote about it 3 weeks later in my personal diary, it still stung bitterly. I felt ill looking back on the experience. You see, I hadn't just let myself down, but the entire team. Swimming for the Dolphins was a matter of school pride. Our coach excelled at building team camaraderie. He was also great at winning championships. His success was built on two principles: participation and dedication. When you got in the pool, you were expected to put in the work. And when you went to swim meets, he expected you to win. Not in a mean ogre coach kind of way, but in a cheering you on because he knew you had it in you. Winning to him was as natural as showing up consistently and putting in the effort. This was my second year of swimming, so I figured I knew the routine. 6 months of daily practice, a smattering of invitational meets throughout the year, all leading up to the area finals. Typically, the Dolphins dominated. Sure, there was the odd club swimmer that was a threat in individual events, but as a team and in the relays, we were solid. I looked forward to the finals with eager anticipation. If I recall, I carved up for the big day. I may have even attempted a raw egg or two. Don't laugh, don't judge me. That's what we thought we were to do back then. This was, after all, the era of Rocky Balboa, and this was my moment to shine. Thank you very much, Adrian. So yeah, I might have been a little overhyped for the event, and why not? The year before, my first year of competitive swimming, I had come home with 2 gold medals and a bronze. I even had a letter from our high school principal congratulating me and the team on our achievements. I was feeling pretty great. The next step, the Olympic podium. But first, a slice of humble pie. Swimming, like track, is all about starts, turns, and finishes. Actually, I'm assuming that because I know nothing about track, but we practice our starts, turns, and finishes. Spring off the blocks as fast and as far as you could, then push off the wall with power at every turn, and finally dig in to finish with everything you have left in the tank. And here's the cardinal rule. No matter what, make sure both hands hit the wall. And this applied to everything, the starts, the turns, and the finishes, as we are about to discover. First up was the 200-meter freestyle relay. We were a very strong team. In all honesty, and I am not exaggerating here, we hardly needed to try. But with the crowd cheering and the adrenaline pumping, you cannot help but give it your all. Only my all started way before the third swimmer's hands hit the wall. As I flew through the air, I knew I had done a false start. In retrospect, I could have stopped, turned around, started, and possibly still medaled. Yes, our lead was that far ahead. Instead, I did what my brain and body instinctively knew how to do. I plowed forward and swam with what felt like my fastest time ever, only to be disqualified. Next came the 50-meter fly, my individual event. To be certain, I would not start before the gun. My lesson in that department had been learned. Yet there was a turn to account for. And though I had not ever made this mistake before and was not to repeat it a second time, only one of my hands hit the wall. I was to take bronze for that event. I got nothing. I was disqualified. Finally, it was time for the 200 medley relay. I know you're all cringing at this point. Where will this train wreck take us? Back, breast, fly, free. I was the third swimmer on the block. This was my chance at redemption. I would be cautious with my start. I would be solid on my turn. But as I powered through the last few strokes, my lungs contracted, my arms became heavy, my form broke, and the wall in front of me receded into the distance. I made it there eventually, and yes, I touched the wall with both hands. But as I looked up, I could see the feet of our anchor were too far off the blocks. My heart sunk. A third disqualification at one meet. And it felt like it was all my fault. Surely I could have dug down and found just a little more gas in the tank. These 3 mistakes were costly. We lost the Junior Girls Championship because of them that year. But here's the thing, I was way harder on myself than anyone else was. As far as I know, not one of my teammates held a grudge. My coach didn't berate me. He didn't point out my mistake or anything that went wrong. On the contrary, as a team, we all met later that night to celebrate with a pizza dinner. And even though I felt like crawling under a rock and never coming out again, I ate the pizza and admittedly, I kind of had fun while I was at the restaurant. Disappointments come and go. Some races are won and some are lost. And some years there are things that are way out of our control, like 2020 and the COVID pandemic. And school sports or music programs or whatever your jam is gets canceled. Maybe it feels like you got disqualified. Sometimes it's more than disappointing. Sometimes it's plain devastating. And it's okay to be devastated because that's just part of being human. I held on to the sadness of being disqualified for a long time, but eventually the hurt went away. I learned from swim team that everyone on the team gets to celebrate for a season well done. 3 disqualifications at one swim meet did not define who I was as a swimmer. It did not define who we were as a team. And it did not discount the effort of showing up every day and putting in the work. And for sure, next year there was a championship waiting for us to win. That's it. That's my story. And I can't wait to share it with my family. And since not many of us will be able to gather together this year because of COVID, we've planned a time to Zoom and share our memories with one another. The silver lining is that we'll probably have more people gathered because of Zoom than any other year we've done this. The holidays can be a wonderful time to create and carry on traditions that help form a child's identity. And the significance of building memories should not be overlooked as a means of helping our kids face the challenges of growing up in this media-saturated world. Find opportunities to connect your kids to your memories, to their grandparents, to family traditions, and all sorts of stories from the past. It's kind of like a deposit that goes into their emotional memory bank and they can use it whenever they need to later on. A while back, I asked my family members to describe what they enjoy most about our tradition of sharing memory stories. One of the grandkids said, "It's like a warm hug. It's kind of as comforting as playing catch with your dad." They love it. The kids really, really love this. So give it a try. You don't have to prepare a story in advance, and you don't have to write it out and share it with extended family on Christmas Day or in a podcast. But my challenge is still to have you share a story this holiday season. Be intentional about it. Think of a fun or interesting experience from when you were a kid. Offer it up and see how your family reacts. See if your kids can relate to you in a brand new way, not just as their parent, but as a real human being who once had a childhood. I hope you have fun and have a wonderful Christmas. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Media Savvy Moms podcast. For detailed show notes and links to any of the resources mentioned today, visit ParentsAware.info. To connect with us on social media, find us on Instagram at Media Savvy Moms and on Facebook and Twitter at ParentsAware. We would love to get your feedback. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen to this podcast. Until next week, let's keep talking.